Good morning, early morning again for me doing these videos. This is Carol King, the developer of Custom Home Builder Solutions, also known as CHS. This will be a continuation of videos about setting up vendors and then using a list of vendors to do all sorts of things that maintain the vendors and contact with the vendors. I am going to focus in this video on the vendors list and ways of communicating with the vendors and about the vendors. So let's get started. Let's go to Vendors Setup and Info, and then the Vendors List. We have talked about all sorts of things like setting up a new vendor, editing vendors, deleting vendors with the delete thing, looking at things that are used, moving vendors that are duplicate from one vendor to another, changing the code on the vendor, etc., using the vendors list. Now what I'd like to look at for just a second is other things like reports, labels, searching for certain things, and then doing labels. Actually, I'll do a second video following this one that has more to do with reports. But I'd like to talk about comments to and from vendors, also ways to reach out to vendors using labels or seeing their phone numbers and the various contacts for the vendors, etc. So let's just click here for a second on ABC Foundation. Now notice that there is information that shows up when you click on different vendors. It's their address and then ABC Foundation. If we do a Google map, it locates, actually this was a house I used to have back when that I no longer live in Austin, but I used that address because I was faking things out. But you can do all sorts of things with the Google map, see where the vendor is located if you need, and get the map. The other thing that I wanted to point out here is that there's other contacts. Notice there's the owner, there's me as the controller, this is all fakey stuff, and Mary Jones as the bookkeeper, which we also made a note about so that we could see it right away here, with their phone numbers, with their email addresses, that kind of thing, so that if you need that information to reach out. I'll show you in a minute our mobile that we have for this, where you could actually, since you'd be on a mobile phone or something, click the phone number and call them, click on the email and have it use your phone email, etc. We'll go to that in just a minute. But I'd like to go ahead and click the edit button on ABC Foundation just to make sure you know where you add in those additional contacts. On the screen for editing, there's a place to put in somebody's name that's your main contact there. I put this name in a long time ago, but there's a place to put in more, and you can start typing in things here for 3 additional contacts and then save it. Just wanted you to know where that was done. That plus button there by the main contact. But you get the concept there. Now, before I go any farther with various things like comments to and from, I'd like to make sure you know what the mobile list of contacts will do for you. So I'm going to pause a minute and I'll be right back. So here we are on the mobile, all strewed out here because I'm on my PC and I went to CHS, but I selected the link that you will see for the mobile, opening the mobile things that we have. We do have something called Contacts Directory, and that's what I'm wanting to talk about. But I'm going to sort of simulate being on a phone. It knows this is a mobile, so it knows when you're on a smaller screen to move its stuff all around to look right. So this probably looks more right to you for being on some sort of phone or maybe a tablet. But if we do the Contacts Directory and filters, and I say I just want to see all, I don't know, subcontractors or something, or a certain contact, just one particular contact, I can select that. Contact type or payer type. Contacts will include all of your vendors, all of the people you set up as customers or payers, or just some miscellaneous general contacts. So it's a combination of all those, but it will include the vendors. If I open the directory, you will see a list of all the ones that match that filter that we did. And you can go ahead and click on, say, ABC Foundation, which is what we were looking at, and it'll slide over to, it's called Another Panel. It's telling me there's some alerts I might want to read about. Probably some things that are expired, etc. It'll let me get a report of that. And I can see there's some alerts about various things that are expired. And I can go back to CHS. I could leave that open there, but then I can go home. But if we go back to the Contacts Directory, Filters, I still have Subcontractor, and open the directory. And we go to ABC Foundation. You can see that if I start sliding down, you will see the primary email I talked about and various phone numbers and a little phone, so that if you're on your phone it will go ahead and pop up and ask if you'd like to call them. A little email icon, if you're on your phone it'll probably go to your general email thing, and it will put that email address in. So there's those 3 contacts that we talked about there. So you could do that real quickly if you're wanting to reach out and talk to the vendor. You can click to see where this vendor has been used and get various reports of things for this vendor and that kind of thing. Just wanted you to know. So I did want you to be aware that if you're just wanting to reach somebody that's in your contacts list in CHS, you could select to go to the mobile one and use the feature for contacts directory. Okay, I'll take a minute and I'll be back into the main program of CHS. So here we are back inside CHS, the main program, looking at the vendors list. And I'd like to talk about this comments bubble. There's other videos about various comments, but I'm going to go to the S's because I think I have some comments that make more sense. But it's showing that there's been comments to and from SunWest Tile. This one hasn't had any, but if you click it, you could go ahead and create some comments or send a comment to the particular vendor. So let's click this. I'm just going to leave the H here. You're going to be able to see all comments when this menu opens, to and from, or just all for this contact reference. So I'm just going to click that so we can just look at stuff for SunWest Tile. Let's go down to the oldest. You can see we did a bid request and that there's a link to the bid request that we sent to them. We can see that bid request that we created out of CHS. This all has to do with K-tops and tubs allowance. It shows the cost code, shows what job, that kind of thing. They sent us back their bid proposal. It's still the same job it looks like, and there's their proposal. We're not going to go over all this. This is just to let you know that when we use a bid request out, there's features in CHS to send the bid request. The vendor will get an email that has a link in it to open the communication portal, and then the vendor can reply and upload things, like this was an upload of a bid. Then we created a purchase order, and that link would be a list of the purchase order. Since I'm inside CHS, I could go straight to edit the PO if I needed to. Then we got an email back, because when the vendor receives something as a comment, especially a purchase order, it tells them that they can sign the purchase order. So if they open the communication portal, they can do a signature on that PO, and then I got a email just triggered by the fact that they did that. We put the signature on the PO. If we look at the PO, we see that a signature has now been stored on it. Then there's communication that's internal, that SunWest is adding $5.50 to their bill for shower niches. Now this kind of comment will show up when the field is out there trying to approve bills, and this is the project manager on the bill. And I noticed as the bookkeeper that they were charging us $550 additional that was already on the bid, and they were like adding it to it, and so we had some alarm about that. And then there's some note about do not pay this. It was included, you know, this part, because I made separate lines to show this $550 that I didn't think we probably should pay. So you can get an idea of all the comments of everything that you can see. You can search for things for a certain cost code maybe, or various, something that says tubs, you know, to see all the ones about tubs. So there's quite a bit of communication that you can do right there using the comments with the vendors. Now let's get on to some other things about communicating with vendors. First of all, let's say we just want to look at active. Notice these A's right here. Oh, I went to the S's. Let's do show all and refresh. Notice the A and the I. This I means all safe security is marked as inactive, and that basically means we won't be able to print them a check. Sometimes active and inactive is used to put a hold on a certain vendor for a while, and then you might come back and change it back to active, you know, so you edit it and you change it to active. But let's just say we want to look at just the active, and notice that all safe security will disappear, and it's not there anymore, and our records are less than they used to be. There is also the alphabet bar that you saw me use a minute ago, so that if I just wanted to see all the vendor codes that start with a J or an F or the S like I used to get to SunWest Tile, etc. So you could do that and just see the S's. This will help you move around to find people you'd like to communicate with or edit or whatever else you're trying to do. So what I'd like to go over now, let's show all and refresh this, is the fields search. Other ways other than alphabet or by active and inactive that you could search for various types of vendors. And one reason you might want to do this, getting back to that sort of communication idea, is maybe you'd like to search for just certain vendors or for certain types of vendors, or maybe you're getting ready to work on 1099s and you just want to look for vendors that you'll be sending 1099s to. So there's various tips and tricks down here telling you about how to do searches, but I'll do a couple of them. Let's just say for some reason you're wanting to see ABC Foundation. You could click on the first one, just hold down your mouse key to hold on and start sliding. And you just want to see these four for whatever reason. You can do that with a search. See that there, field search. You can then clear your search. You could also select one, hold down your shift key instead of sliding down and get all of these in your search. But let's clear the search. It takes me out of here when I clear it. Let's go back in here. Let's say we are just interested in our subcontractors and our suppliers. So I'm just held down my control key. If I wanted something else, I could do overhead, hold down control key, and I would just get overhead and supplier. But let's go ahead and just set this back to no selection. And then let's do subcontractor and supplier. Maybe we're wanting to get a list of just all our subcontractors and suppliers because we want to send some labels to them. Maybe we're inviting them all to some sort of framing party. We used to have that where I worked, was framing parties, and we'd invite all the subs and trades, that kind of thing. So that you can do labels for sending out maybe invitations. Maybe it's not a framing party for one house because you get all your trades and suppliers, but some big thing party you're throwing, you might want to send invitation. So first of all, for the invitations idea, there's name labels, and mail labels. Let's look at the mail labels because it has our return address and it has their address. So notice that this says Avery 5163 2x4 inches. It's telling you what kind of label. And when you do labels, you always need to download them. Now depending on what your browser is and how this opened, you might have a downward arrow or some other download thing. But this one has a folder with a download icon. We have some information in our user connection guide about how to set up your browser, especially Firefox, so that it would open and ask you if you want to open it with your PDF reader instead of just automatically downloading it, and you have to go find that somewhere at the bottom of your thing. You should look into that, into setting up your browser and telling it how you want to open PDFs. So now it's really in the format that I can use to print labels. You want to first probably try it on a blank piece of paper and hold it up to your labels to see if they're fitting correctly. Because it's very important that you tell it to do actual size. Look what happens if look at this screen when I set it to fit, so that your reader is trying to make it look all nice for you. You do not want to do that because this is designed by us to fit the labels, and you need to leave it in actual size. Portrait. This is options provided by my particular printer, so yours may look different. You don't want it to shrink. You want to do actual size. Make sure you don't tell it to fit or shrink or do best options or anything. Don't let it think for you. Make sure you set it to actual size. Then you can put your labels in and print, but like I say, maybe you want to do a range of pages 1 to 1 here and then print and hold up to your labels. So that's how you do labels that are mailing labels. You could also do some name labels if you want some. It's telling you which Avery. Maybe you want these labels to put on some file folders that you're keeping of your various vendors. You can do, instead of sorted by code, you can do it sorted by the name itself. So it's sorting a little bit differently maybe, depending on your name. And then no code, just the name. type of labels. So there's various labels. The reason I wanted to talk about the mail labels was that's another way to communicate, to get a bunch of labels to communicate with your vendors. Now there's one other place for labels. Let's say that we get bills from ABC Foundation and they never send us a return envelope and we're printing checks. There's a place where you can do a whole list of labels just for that one vendor. And that's on the line for the vendor, so that I do that. I have a couple of bills I pay. I'm not using subs and trades. I'm a software company. But I use CHS, and I have a couple of people that send me bills, like the place where we have our servers. They don't ever send a return envelope, but I print checks. So I print out a whole sheet of labels to them so that when I'm doing bills every month, I can just pull the label off. And I keep it in my box or folder of stuff that I have where I have all my bills to pay, but I keep a sheet of those labels there. That's just a little tip. And again, that's based on the searches that you've done. So you can do whatever searches that you need to do. You could set, instead of doing the active over here, you can put an A in here for active. The other thing you might be wanting to search for is people that you're going to be sending 1099s to, etc. You don't want to do labels, but you might be searching for those, and we'll talk about that in our next video, where we're going to focus on the various reports of vendors that you can get in CHS to prepare for doing 1099s or to look at terms and insurance expire, etc. So please continue to the next video, where we will talk about the list of reports that can be very handy for you to use in CHS. And thank you for watching.